Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inspiring Chaos. If you do not know who I am, hi, my name is Eunice. I'm the host and founder of this amazing and inspiring community, and welcome to the second episode of season 4. And I am very excited for today's guest or today's episode because this is the first episode we have a guest in. If you haven't heard the first episode, I totally recommend it because it's just me talking about the vision of the podcast, what's happening in the podcast, and the new things that are occurring. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, you should totally listen to it, check it out. But for today's first guest of season 4 of this new season, I wanted to have the amazing, the extraordinary, the inspiring, the incredible, the absolutely badass Latina, Millie Perez. She is a Latina uprising writer. She already had her first debut album released last year, and her second book is coming out very soon. So I'm very excited for that. And I randomly bumped into her page on Instagram, and her passion, her love, her authenticity transmitted through the screen. And when her book was released, I absolutely bought it because I just wanted. It was the first time actually that I ever read about a Latina character, a Latina main character, and not the stereotypical, character that we usually see. And I read it and I fell in love with the characters, and I knew I wanted to create an episode with her. I really wanted to interview her because I would have loved to have seen someone that looked like me doing something that I'm interested in. And when Millie came in on the podcast and talked about her journey, about her story, it is absolutely inspiring. And I admire her so much. And I just want to say thank you, Millie, for um, giving me the honor to interview you as the first guest of the season. I absolutely admire you. Thank you so much. And I know you're going to get inspired by her story. She does give her social media at the end, so stay tuned for the whole thing and follow her because she absolutely deserves it. And follow us as well at Inspiring Chaos with Eunice. Um, and I honestly just want to make the intro short because I really want you guys to hear her story. In the episode, I am a little bit sick. It was by the end of last year, so I was a little bit under the weather. But I honestly, her energy, her love just submitted to the screen that I honestly didn't even feel sick when I was doing it. I did cough a little bit, but just her energy and her love just was absolutely amazing. So you kind of hear it on my voice, but I hope you stay for the whole thing, listen to the whole thing because you're not going to regret it because she is amazing. And that is all for the intro. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, an amazing start of the week, and I hope you see how inspiring and incredible and remarkable you are. Now let's go hear Millie's inspiring story of success. For today's guest, we have Millie Perez. She is the author of You Never Forget Your First and He Just Might Be the Death of Me, which is her debut novel, which was released on November 15th of 2022. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. You are someone I truly admire so much. You are a Latina writer, which is amazing. Wrote about a Latina character, a
Mhm.
badass Latina character.
Yes,
And I
badass.
wanted to ask you, when did your love for writing begin?
Honestly, I can't remember a time when I didn't love writing.
Mm.
I just remember being in school and they're like, "Oh, write short stories or write a paragraph," and everyone would complain, and I'd be like, "It's not enough! Like there must be a cliffhanger or something." So I think I've always just loved reading and writing, and I think the older we get and the more distracted we get, and life gets in the way. I think sometimes you get pulled away from it. And then last year, I stepped away from my job and I was really into reading because I became a stay-at-home mom. So you need something to keep your brain creative and alive after doing Groundhog Day and diaper changes and everything that comes with being a first-time mom in a pandemic. So really no idea what I was doing. So then once I got back into that reading bug, that's when the writing came back to me, and I was like, I have a story and I need to put it out. And I think the common theme I kept seeing is, I kept tweaking the characters in my head to kind of, feel more like me. I always felt like the banter and the humor and the sass matched me, but never physically like looked like me or came from a background that I could like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they don't look like me, but certain aspects I can be like, oh, maybe my Thea's like that or something. So then I'm like, if I'm gonna write something, I need to be the type of author that represents people who look like me. And honestly, that it made it much easier writing from a perspective that's my own. So yeah.
Yeah, what it was the most difficult part in writing a book?
Oh, wow. So for me, running off that first time mom thing is time because, yeah, having a 1 year old at the time, like he didn't understand, like, Mom, I used to go to Starbucks and write, you know? So luckily, my husband, like, really MVP stepped in and helped out, and I spent my weekends by myself writing. But the other major hard part was imposter syndrome.
Mm,
Basically, like, girl, what are you doing? And the thing is that you're doing it in secrecy too, because like I always knew I had the dream to write a book, but I never knew anyone in my community, in my
mm.
family that was, a creative thinker, artist, writer kind. Everyone was like a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, basically like something that gives you a secure check every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And no one ever, thought or fathomed. No one had, the possibility to even dream to do those things because of a lot of our families have histories of immigration
Mhm.
and poverty and all these things, so you cling on to everything that is secure. So doing this in secrecy and finding time to do it was tough. And then the imposter syndrome is like, girl, like really, like what are you doing? Like you are a therapist by trade, you went to school and have a boatload of student loans. You went from doing therapy for couples and family and mental health counseling to I want to write a love story. So about someone who's Latina and this, and of course the man must be a billionaire. That's when I really took off. But yeah, so like the imposter syndrome constantly, like even if I would write something and I knew I loved it, and I would show it to my best friend and be like, hey, and she's like, that's great. The next day when I would sit down, I'm like, I just want to trash it. Like just shelf it. Like it never
Mhm.
happened. Like who do I think I am kind of thing to even like how am I going to break into this industry? So that kept stopping me, but I'm stubborn. So it was I don't have this enlightening thing that kept me going. I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And my pre-orders are going to be during Latinx Heritage Month. And it's because you know what? If anything, I did that. Like, so those are the hardest parts. I think we become our own worst enemies and we create these mental blocks. And if we hear a whisper of something, we blow it up into like full
Mhm.
blown, panic. And we're like, no, we really aren't fit for this. Or maybe there's a reason there aren't that many of us. And you just kind of just go down that rabbit hole. So it ain't easy at times, but the view is nice from here. So
Yeah.
keep pushing.
What inspired you to write a book, and what inspired the idea of your book?
So, like I said, I've always loved writing and I got really creative after I had my son. And I think that's also another thing. It's like a lot of women, especially, and this is in my book, like there's like a woman about to turn 30, doesn't have a
Mhm.
man, doesn't have kids, like all those pressures. And for me, I was a woman that was married, had just had a baby, and I was like, I still want more. This still isn't enough. Like you don't stop dreaming or achieving things because quote unquote someone else's check boxes have been met. I was
Mm.
like, I want my son to know that even after you've accomplished things, you can create new dreams and then go for those because, the time we have here to be like, oh, like, the time we have here is so special. And it's like, you don't
Yeah.
want to leave and be like, oh, there's so many things I never did just because, I just thought.
Mm.
So that was definitely something that pushed me to write it. And so what influenced my book was it's actually pretty funny. So it's called You Never Forget Your First. And that can be interpreted in many ways. So someone asked me, like, well, your first what? And I was like, well, that's kind of why the story is so fun, because there's your first crush, there's your first kiss, there's your first, you know what, there's your first love. Like there's so many firsts that can happen. And I remember looking back like at my first crush or looking back at certain relationships I had throughout high school or college, and I tell my friends like I feel like I pulled a Taylor Swift because I was able to incorporate all those relationships into characters or things in this book and kind of just take the power back out of
Mhm.
situations and relationships that weren't healthy for me. So I based Amelia very, very, extremely, very loosely on myself in the sense that her background is daughter of Dominican immigrants, like the cousin crew. A lot of Latinos who are first gen like don't aren't raised with their cousins because they're back at their country of origin. So that cousin crew, I very much grew up with that. And then I just said, okay, now here comes the creativity part of like, because my first crush was not a billionaire. And my husband is not one either. So sorry, he's not around. But yeah, and I really just wanted to showcase a strong woman who's Latina in an interracial relationship. I'm in an interracial relationship. My husband is French Canadian, and just kind of show how you can still get those warm and fuzzies, those, you go girl moments, and just
Mhm.
show the characters having different backgrounds to see that you can still go through that ride in a story that you're reading, but the characters, you learn so much about their culture and the food and the family dynamics. So all in all, it's like it was a mishmash of my life, little Taylor Swift vendetta, and a sprinkle of like good old rom-com loveliness, and I've just like created this beast that it is now of You Never Forget Your First.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned in intro, this is your first book you ever wrote. Um,
Yes.
who is someone you look up to in the writing field as an author?
Oh my gosh. So I gotta give it up for Claire Contreras and Adriana Herrera, two Dominican writers. Um, and I've interacted with them on social media, and I literally go into fetal position. I'm just like, oh my God, and it's so great because, like I said, there's not many of us. So when you see
Mhm.
someone that, you automatically cling to and admire and you connect with your culture, and then they're so open and welcoming and even nicer than you could have imagined, it's like, I am not worthy. So those are two people that I love. And, with Claire, like she is so diverse. Like she has like mafia romance, like she has like sports romance. And, I'm very much a mood reader. So the fact that I can support all my moods with a Dominican author is awesome. And I also love Sarah Adams. She is the queen of closed door romance. And my book is Closed Door. I call it steamy closed door because I didn't read the closed door handbook. So I don't know if I went too far in certain parts, but the door's closed, but still. So it was so good, like reading her books and, as someone again who loves to read her books and then now interact with her and be able to chat with her. It's like breaking that fourth wall. And honestly, I would have written a book a long time ago if I knew I could just interact with the authors like, hey, colleague. Yeah, right. I'm still, in fetal position usually. I just throw the phone on the couch. I'm like, oh my God, I need some water.
Um, what was your favorite childhood book that got you into reading?
um, so I loved the Nancy Drew books, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
interesting because I'm such a lover of thriller. And I love like true crime, and I sprinkled a lot of that in my book. And a lot of people are like, oh, this is a rom-com, but there's more. And I was like, yeah, well, so that's something that I might incorporate in the future. But I just remember growing up in New York, the Scholastic School Fairs. That's where it went down. That's how you know who was serious and whatnot. So it was Nancy Drew. That's the main one. I remember I loved Harry Potter. The first book, we read it when we were in elementary school, and I that was like the first time I was like introduced to like not fantasy, but like also creating a world,
Mhm.
not so much like, hey, everything I grew up reading was like based in New York. And when you're in New York, you kind of just think like everything is there. You don't realize that people think New York is a character in and of itself. So I was like, whoa, I'm really, transported somewhere. So I really love that I was introduced to that at a young age. And I'm so appreciative of like those type of genres now.
Yeah, like you mentioned, before becoming a writer, you were a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a master's degree in couple and family therapy and mental health counseling. And what made you decide to create or change your career?
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things where I don't even know if I'm fully removed from it. And
Mm,
I'm one of those people that says you can try to do it all. You might not do it all very well, but you can try. But I love the mental health space. I think it's so important, especially for people in the Latino community who, are very skeptical and sometimes hold out for help. And so when I joined the mental health community as being a counselor, working with women recovering from substance abuse or working with mental health issues or teens in group homes, I literally did like the whole spectrum. I went from like babies, and I've worked in nursing homes. So I've done the whole spectrum of life. When it was time for me to have my son, I had all the intentions of coming back to work. And then life kind of just happened. And, a pandemic was in the way. And I wasn't in a space where I felt emotionally ready to go back to work. So I just said, you know what, this is an opportunity, and I have the privilege to even have the option to become a stay-at-home mom, because that's not an option for many, many women.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what, let me just take the stay-at-home mom role as, a blessing. While your baby's young, only for a short period of time. And then mama wrote a book. So my husband's like, this was the time for you to be home with your son. And you're like, career number two. So, and I think it's also, it's always going to be a part of me. And I incorporated aspects of mental health in my book. I name
Mhm.
drop a therapist that's one of my best friends who is a therapist, and we went to grad school together and got our degrees together.
Oh.
So I talk about a character going to therapy, and I really want to promote that and I didn't make it like a, hey, she's in therapy, guys. More just like, this is just mentioned casually, because it should be something that should
Mhm.
be casual. Like, yeah, we go to therapy and it's not a big deal, and we're taking care of ourselves, and that makes us healthier human beings and happier human beings. So I honestly feel like I'm finding a way to balance, my mental health. I'm trying to use my degree in any way possible so that the student loans don't come for me. But it's also, I think it's like my experience in the mental health world. I've seen so much, I've learned so much. So whatever I can use to help educate, I will do.
Mhm.
And then whatever else isn't helpful, I'll use for character development for future characters. And they'll be very interesting.
Who inspires you to continue working towards your dream? I mean, being an author is very challenging. So who is that person, or who are those people?
Honestly, when I first started off this journey, it was kind of I'm doing this for me. I just
Mm.
want, my life dream was to have my book on my bookshelf and have it live there, and to be able to have grandkids or great grandkids and whatever, and be like, wow, grandma used to talk like this. And just have that story. And then once I started doing it, and once I started, seeing how happy it made me, and I would literally be giggling while typing and all these things. I realized, like, I want my son to see that,
Mm.
because I used to work at a lot of nonprofits, and the burnout was real. And sometimes you get home and you're just depleted, and you've given your all. And I did that before I had a child. So I couldn't imagine, at least while my child is young, to be able to go and do that. So anytime I'm thinking about what the future looks like, writing another book, right now I'm in the midst of book number two and what that's going to be. I know. And I just think about I just want my kids to, it's like a weird balance of, like, I want my kid to be proud of me, but at the same time, like I said, like, once my kid is older, I want him to continue to have dreams. And this is me also allowing myself to say,
Mm.
hey, you can keep going. If the option is there and circumstances are aligning themselves, like, no one's stopping you except yourself. So,
Mhm.
and it's a tough pill to swallow, because indie and self-publishing is not for the
Uh,
faint of heart. You got to wear a bajillion hats. I've learned how to do things on this computer that I feel like the government's tracking me. Like, please don't check my Google search. But yeah, it's very, very hard, but I will say it's very rewarding. And once you do it at least once, I hope by the time the second book comes out, it's like, oh, I lied. But hopefully once I get it, since it's done once, then it's more like riding a bike, and I know what to expect. The first time is very scary, and every time you turn a corner, something goes wrong. So if any other indie authors are watching this, like, keep going. Like, I swear I might not be promoting it well, but it's fun once you get to the finish line. Yeah. And my readers, oh my God, as if I could not write a second book. My DMs, they're like, girl, where is it? Are we gonna beta read? Are we like, I have people giving suggestions. I have people helping with title for book number two. Like, it's not even, it's gonna get crowdsourced.
I also wanted to, you kind of mentioned it, you're a self-published author. What was the
Mhm.
hardest part of that?
I think the better question, what was the easy part of it? I think, of course, you can Google a lot of things, but it's
Mhm.
so complex. Um, I think for me, I just wasn't aware of all the mini steps. I thought it was like, you write a book, you get it edited, you get it formatted, and then you upload it to KDP, and then pray to the Amazon gods that everything goes well. But there's so many little intricate steps. I feel like I'm going to be triggered if I go through each and every one of them. But I think No, I think the toughest part is feeling like you go on Bookstagram, for example, and you see these people who have perfectly curated pages and
Mhm.
content, and I'm like, I don't even know where to make this thing go here. Like, and then you just feel, for lack of a better word, you just feel dumb, and then you just feel like so defeated, and you're just like, I don't, how do these people do it, and why does this look so simple, and how are people just like, my book comes out in 2 weeks? I'm like, what? Like, I said it comes out on that day. I hope it does. So the thing that I will suggest for all those nitty gritty things like formatting or figuring out like the most minute, even like the font on your book, like you need to have a conversation with something. Like it's the thing. So my suggestion is, you know, go slide into those DMs of authors that you love and respect. I will say 90 95, I'll say 95% of indie authors will respond to you, and every single author I have DM'd and asking them a self-publishing question, as like, it could be super complex or super simple, they've all answered it for me. Like every single person has responded and answered, given me resources. So again, it's hard, but the community does help so
Mhm.
much. And everyone says that, but then it doesn't help if you don't, ask. So
Mhm.
I was, and I'm not the kind of person, I don't want to be bothersome. And, your first time, you're like, I'm a nobody. They're going to think it's going to go into the spam folder or something. And no, they literally walked me through processes. And then it took away that like cloak of like mystery. And I'm like, oh, okay, now I know what it is. I can, step away and not spiral and move away from panic. So yes, there's a lot of like mini steps along the way that hit you, or little errors, or your books are sent to you and they're printed wrong, and just things that you don't think about. You think, oh, here's the cover, this should be perfect, and it's like, nope. So it's like, now what do you do?
Yeah.
So
How long did it take you to write a book, your first book?
actually, that was the easiest part, writing it, because I think it was stuck in my head, the story, that
Mhm.
whenever I got pockets of time to step away, I just wrote it fast. So I started writing this book in May, and it was off to my editor by end of July. So I think about 3 months, and I only had the weekends, a couple hours on the weekends. So if you add them all up consecutively, I don't know. I'm not good at math. But yeah, 3 months during the weekends, sometimes during my son's nap times and after bed. But again, that's because I'm stubborn, not because you have to. It's because I'm like, it goes to the editor in July, and then hopefully by September 15th, I can announce pre-orders, and it'll be in some sense or shape, to go out into the world. But yeah, I think the writing part is fast, because for me, that's my favorite part.
Mhm.
Like, I wanted to be a writer. I did not want to be a brand ambassador, a content creator, like all these things. The learning curve is so steep. So I'm learning, but when it's just me and my laptop and a story that's in my head, it's very fast for me, because I outline everything before I go into the process. So when I sit down to type, I just see where I'm at the outline or what I feel like writing, and then I just dive into it.
What advice would you give anyone who's interested in becoming a writer?
Do it. Advice is, you know what? If you have that spidey sense inkling, just go for it. The worst thing that can happen is that you don't like what you write, and then maybe
Mhm.
you start over, or at least you gave it a shot. There's no harm in going for something that's your dream, and there are so many people along the way that are willing to help you, and just reach out, ask questions. A lot of times people say, oh, I want to write, but I won't be able because of X, Y, and Z. Like, well, reach out to someone, ask. My DMs are always open. I will tell you, I will voice memo you, because it'll probably be easier than me typing so much. I'll be like, girl, listen, have a seat, have a glass of wine. Yeah, so anyone that has advice, do it. Reach out to the community of bookstagrammers. It's not as scary as it seems. There have been accounts that I have followed forever, and I was so intimidated by them, and now we're on texting terms, and they know my birth stories. Like, you just become so tight with people, and it's honestly incredible. I feel like it's better to try something and have it maybe not go your way than to just never try it. That's just my philosophy.
So I like to end with a very important question. And I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give your younger self?
Whew. Well, I think for me, now that I'm in my 30s, I look back and I put a lot of different people on pedestals, or, saying like, oh, like people are better than me, or,
Mm,
oh, they come from this type of family, or, oh, they're from this type of culture. So, with me and my family were immigrants and whatnot. And I would be like, you know what? Put yourself on a pedestal. Your
mm,
culture and your values matter. And that, I feel like during your teenage years, you try to assimilate to just anything because you just want to belong. And
mhm.
now, as you get older, you find strength at the core of who you are and your history and your culture and your family. And now that I look back, I'm like, y'all ain't ish. Like, I am a proud Dominican woman and I am doing the damn thing. And I see, wow, like I was giving my power so easily
Mm,
away to people just to be like, included, to feel like I was part of the crew or blend in. And I'm like, why am I blending in? Pop on a red lip, put your hair in
yeah.
that curly ponytail and keep it pushing. Like, it's fine. Like, you're gonna be fine. Like, just, yeah, be yourself. I don't want to be corny and say be yourself, but honestly, like
Yes.
being yourself is pretty freaking cool and awesome, and it's a lot less work. You can be a lot more chaotic, a lot more unhinged, a
Mhm.
lot more authentic. I mean, that's my advice. But again, I'm the person that's going to send you voice memos and probably get you in trouble.
Thank you so much. I will love you can share your social media with all of us.
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Millie Perez Author. It's my only social media. I can barely manage that one. So you can follow me there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun.
You have reached the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got inspired by Millie's story because I sure did. When I got to interview her and go follow her in all her platforms and also go buy her book, you can find it in the link in her bio. And also, thank you so much for sticking around, for listening. And I hope you have an amazing Sunday. And also, don't forget to follow us if you would like to as well. I hope you see how remarkable and inspiring you are and talk to you on Wednesday. Bye.